Afternoon, everybody. Well, good evening. Thank you all for joining all this evening. We look forward to having a very engaging conversation with our guest speaker, Devin McCourty. And in order to get us started, first I want to let you guys know a little bit about B.E.N Millennials. We are a subcommittee of the Black Employee Network, which is an employee resource group for the city of Boston. And our goal is to empower Black millennials who work for the city of Boston and build pipelines to leadership positions, network, and just provide that support for one another that we all know we need working for the city. So that starts with the speaker series. And so with that, I want to also introduce um, Chief Aisha Miller of Civic Engagement. First off, congratulations on behalf of Millennials and B.E.N on this new position and new journey that you're going on. And I know that you have a few words that you'd like to share with everybody on the call. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to you without further ado.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, thank you, Kyron. My name is Aisha Miller, and I was just recently named the Chief of Civic Engagement by the Mayor Martin J. Walsh. And on behalf of him and the City of Boston, I just want to welcome all of you to the Black Millennials Speaker Series that I truly, truly enjoy. And thank you for inviting me once again. Unfortunately, the mayor couldn't be here today. He had a prior engagement, but he asked me to express to all of you his deepest gratitude for all the work you all are doing, the intentional engagement with millennials, specifically Black millennials, and the engagement that you're building through this group. So that needs to be applauded. Dominique, Chiron, Quincy, I know you guys are working extremely hard in making sure that these speaker series continue, and your whole entire group. So I just want to personally say thank you, and I am very, very humble by all of you calling me chief. That's why I giggled, because I'm just a really humble person. And I'm like, you can call me Aisha. I understand the respect level of everything, but I'm just a humble person, and I don't want to lose that. And I probably won't, but I don't want to lose that. So I know you guys are going to have a special guest today, Devin, from the New England Patriots, and just enjoy that. They do a phenomenal job, both he and his brother, on the football field, but they also spread their passion for sickle cell outside the football field. And I think that's something to be commended for because, as you know, the stats, 1 out of, I think, 500 people, Black people, have sickle cell anemia. So for them to be using their platform to spread awareness through their sickle cell foundation, to me, needs to be applauded and commended. So Chiron, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And again, thank you all for the congratulations and the well wishes. I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Miller. And also, Chief Miller is also one of our advisors for the B.E.N Millennial Group. So we thank you for your support in that capacity. I know that we may have some of the advisors on the call. I believe I saw Commissioner Indira Alvarez join. But for those who may not be on, Chief Shumaine Benford is also a advisor, as well as Commissioner Dion Irish and Erica Butler. They serve as advisors to us so that whenever we need some support or somebody to lean on, they're able to guide us and help us navigate those waters. So without further ado, what I also want to do is Chief Miller started to mention some members of the team, the leadership committee for B.E.N Millennials, which helps to make this happen. So I want to start by introducing the team to you. So once again, my name is Kyron Owens. I'm the co-chair of B.E.N Millennials. And with that, I'll reintroduce you to my co-chair.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Dominique Williams with the Department of Neighborhood Development, and I am co-chair for B.E.N. great to see so many new faces and so many familiar faces we haven't seen in a long time since all of this began. With that, I will pass it over to Quincy.
Hi, I'm Quincy Roberts with Fair Housing and Equity. I am the treasurer of B.E.N Millennials. And with that, on to Nyla then.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nyla Freeman. I'm one of the attorneys with the Law Department for the city. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. All right, so we'll pass it over to Denise.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Nyla. Hi, Denise Rory. I work with the Boston Public Schools, and I'm part of the B.E.N Leadership Group. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. This is super exciting. And I will pass it over to Carlita.
Thank you, Denise, and thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Carlita Chambers Walker. I work in the Mayor's Office of Scheduling, and my role as a member in B.E.N is one of the civic engagement coordinators. I will pass it on to Rakia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rakia Edwards. I'm the co-chair of engagement.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff. I'm with the Boston Police Department. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited about this conversation today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dominique Mathis. I am part of the Finance Commission for the City of Boston, and I am also part of the leadership team.
I believe that rounds out. Kyra, if you just want to introduce yourself really quickly to the audience, and then we'll get the program started.
Thank you, Kyron. Good evening, everyone. Kyra Fox. I'm Director of Outreach and Service in the Mayor's Office Civic Engagement Cabinet, and I am a General B.E.N Leadership Member.
Thank you, leadership members, for introducing yourself. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring up Jeff Lopes, who's going to be our MC for the evening, and we'll also introduce our guest speaker today. So, Jeff.
Thank you, Kyron. And again, thank you, everyone, for joining today. Very excited about this conversation. Devin, thank you for being here with us today. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that we'll take some breaks in between. People can drop questions in the chat for Devin, and we'll give time for people to answer questions. But as we move on, I guess I'll introduce Devin. So I wanted to introduce Devin McCourty, who is one half of the McCourty twins. Devin and his brother J Mac were the first set of twins to actually play together in the Super Bowl and win. And he's a passionate social justice advocate and warrior, aside from his work on the field. So Devin, if you would like to introduce yourself, the floor is yours.
Hey everybody, how you doing? I guess before I start, if you hear any loud noises, I have two kids that are 3 and 2. So if they come running or you hear something crazy, don't be alarmed. I'm excited to just be here with you guys, and I won't talk for too long because I would love to answer any questions that anybody has. But like Jeff mentioned, and I've gotten an opportunity to work with Jeff, and I see George Diaz is on, and they've taught me a lot about what happens in really the Boston area, and also along with Robin Glazer, who I know is also watching, are people who have really helped me connect with the community and really grow, I would say, into a part of the community that as a professional athlete here, that is not always easy to reach, through a lot of the programs and stuff we do as a team. It doesn't always go to the heart of, Boston, to, the inner cities, and, work and do things that I would say not as like popular to do. And, some of the best times I've had is just going out with those guys and just being in the community on a random night and getting to talk to people and getting to know people's story. So I'll just start off by telling you guys a little bit about myself. Grew up in Nyack, New York, in Section 8 housing. My mom, my father passed away when me and my brother, like Jeff mentioned, were 3 years old. And then we also have an older brother who's like 15 years older. And it was really just us four really our whole lives. And, for us, I think growing up, my mom did a lot of things that, I'm sure like a lot of people on this call that you didn't see, that, kind of went unnoticed, all of those different sacrifices. And you don't think about them until you become an adult. And we were fortunate enough, my mom sent us to a private school in New Jersey where, athletics was huge there. A lot of kids went there to get scholarships to go to school. And, hold on, buddy, you got to go in another room. Daddy's doing something, or you got to be quiet, okay? And we went there, and from going there, we were able to get full scholarships to play at Rutgers. And I think for us, we didn't think about it, but 2 years into Rutgers, my mom filed for bankruptcy, and I think that was the first time it dawned on me the sacrifices it took to be a parent. And for me, you fast forward through a college career and being drafted here in New England, NFL, first round draft pick. I felt like I got the real New England right away. I remember getting drafted, and you come in and do this cool press conference, and you're like, man, I made it. Like, I'm a first round pick. They gave me my hat. I'm standing with the team owner. And I remember someone was like, are you aware that, this wasn't a popular pick and people don't understand, why they took a special teams player in the first round? And I remember hearing that, and I was like, well, damn, okay, here we go. They said Boston was rough. I guess I'm finding out. But I remember that fueled me. And to come in here and, to have success as a rookie and feel like you're on top of the world. I quickly found out my second year didn't go as well, but I learned something about success as a team. And my rookie year, go to the Pro Bowl, All Pro. We lose in the first round of the playoffs, and it's a great year. Everyone's telling me how great I'm going to be, and I'm like, yeah, we'll get to the Super Bowl later. And my second year, it goes terribly individually, but we make it to the Super Bowl. And I had to learn, as frustrated as I was with my play, I had to learn, like, all right, I'm here now. Like, I'm playing in a Super Bowl. Like, I've been around players and seen player stories who've never played, who are going to be Hall of Famers or who are already Hall of Famers. And through that, I learned how to look at things and still be positive. And I would say that time in my career really shaped my time here in New England. All those years after having success, having fun, made me always think about just adversity. Like, what do you do with adversity? And I would say because of that, Jason and myself started our campaign, Tackle Sickle Cell, which we hold events in New Jersey and New York, where we're from, that area. Also here in Massachusetts, and then Jason, when he was in Tennessee and Cleveland, hosted comedy nights. And because of that, we've raised, over $1.5 million for sickle cell awareness and funds for families. And that was huge for us because sickle cell runs in our family, and sickle cell also affects 90% minorities. So, I was just passionate because of my family. I watched my aunt struggle with sickle cell, took her life, but she lived to be 69 years old, which is, especially when she was born, was rare for any patient with sickle cell. But it was awesome for me to see, because through the years, you start to realize you were building connections with Black families and families that had very similar upbringings or very similar lives like me and Jay had. And we would build these relationships, and we would watch kids that, were in middle school, now they're graduating high school, they're learning out the healthcare system and how to navigate going to college and learning how to deal with their sickle cell disease on their own. And it was perfect because it blended me right into probably about 3 or 4 years ago, jumping all in with all the social justice stuff that was going on in the country, and being a part of the Players Coalition, which was established by Malcolm Jenkins and Anquan Bolden, which is really just athletes. It started as just NFL players, but now it includes guys from the NBA, MLS, some baseball players. Like, we have guys from all over. And we decided to come together, and we're able to attack different things as a group, whether that was going to the State House and talking about criminal justice reform, or talking about equal education. or whether it was hosting a DA forum and trying to inform people how much power they have in electing their new district attorney. And for me, that was awesome. Like, I felt at home doing those things. I also learned from there that politics would never be in my future, from working with different people and seeing how hard all of that stuff is and getting things passed through. But I would say, fast forward now to 2020 and how tough this year's been, it's just been rough. You know, I remember the season ends, the 19 season for us ends, you know, losing the wild card of the playoffs. And, you know, here, you guys know, if you follow sports, when we don't win a championship, or at least in the championship game, it's like the sky's falling. And I remember walking away from that like, all right, this is going to be a challenging offseason. And then we're hit with COVID and the pandemic. And then in May, with me and my wife, we're expecting our third kid in July, and we lose a baby in late May, like a day or two before George Floyd is killed in Minnesota. And you talk about a process. I remember being at the hospital and going through all of that and getting videos sent to me, and my group chats, like missing 100 text messages. And I remember just that next week of being on a virtual call with the team, and talking to the team, because I was a guy, social justice, like things come up. It was like, well, let's have Deb speak. And I remember speaking about those things and taking time to myself to realize, as much as I was hurting and everything I was going through, just how important it was for some of these issues to be front and center. And I didn't want to miss that. I didn't want to miss out for so many different people who don't have a voice, so many people who were waiting, you know, I won't say waiting for something like this, but we're waiting for people to turn their eyes to things that have been going on in our country for years. And it's been awesome, you know, for us as a team. This is the first time ever, every Monday, we've tried to have some type of meeting for an hour long about social justice. We had Jeff and George, We Belong. We had Boston Uncornered. We had Commonwealth Kitchen come in last Monday. We've had, you know, one of our directors of football operations talk about Armenia and what they're going through. So it's been eye-opening, I think, for me, because I've always taken this role and tried to grab a guy or two. And now it's like the whole team's eyes are opening and seeing all of the different things that they can help with. You know, we have guys like our head of personnel who works with Boston Uncornered. He decided that he wanted to donate money and then reach out to them and talk to them and learn from himself. Nick Casario has learned about them and different things. And I've had other coaches come up to me and in the off season tell me they want me to link them with organizations that they can learn more about. And for me, that's been very rewarding because we're taking people who have never really thought about these things. You know, I've had a coach tell me he hates COVID and us not being able to get together, because for him, it was a time his kids got to be around a diverse population. He said, you know, when we're here in the building, our kids come in and they do, he said, my kids get to see diversity. They get to see how everyone else lives, their cultures. And that's what's been a tough time, I think, for us. But I'm very encouraged by our team. And, you know, a lot of times you got to understand you can control what you can control. And just what happens here in Massachusetts and how much sports is a factor. I'm very encouraged about, you know, how our team wants to have a role in doing some of the positive things in Massachusetts that a lot of times we see leads an example for the rest of the country. So very thankful to be a part of the Patriots, you know, with our owner, Mr. Kraft, and his family, how much they want to do. Part of a campaign, not a campaign, a steering committee with them, giving away $1 million to different organizations here in New England. So it's been a tough year, but it's also been a year of, I would say, you can see some triumph and positivity coming along as people has, you know, jumped in to help each other out. And I think that's what it's all about. And I'm excited to sit on here and answer any questions that you guys might have and things that you might want to hear my opinion on, and things that you might think that we can do as a football team and to help the community out moving forward.
Thank you for that, Devin. That was really well thought out and really good response to what you do and what you've been up to both on the field and off. And, I can't thank you enough for all the work you've helped support me. And so one of our first questions we have here is, what have been some of your most meaningful experiences here in Boston, both on and off the field?
On the field's easy. The Super Bowls, I would say one, winning in the AFC Championship game when you're going to the Super Bowl, that feeling, and then winning Super Bowls. Very fortunate to win 3 of them, and obviously the last one I won with you win with your twin brother. Like nothing's better than that, of just doing those things. And then I would say off the field. Some of the best things I think that happened to me off the field were things that I never ever thought I would be doing. When I first went to the State House and just met with people, different legislators, and talked to them about different issues and things like that was cool. And did a press conference there, and I was like, all right. And then when they asked us to testify on behalf of equal education. I was just like, yeah, it's cool. And then they were like, yeah, it's probably like 300 to 400 people in there. And this is right after we won the Super Bowl. And it's myself, my brother Jason, Matt Slater, and Deron Harmon. And your heart start beating. We're nervous. We asked a ton of questions going in. We're like anybody else, more nervous than when we play football by far. But when we walked away from there and to be able to testify, and I remember, someone asked a question and everyone told us at the senator's office, they was like, nah, no one will ask you a question. Like, they just want to hear from you. And then someone asked a question and all 4 of us kind of froze. And those guys all looked at me. And when I responded and talked about an even playing field for kids that, grow up and have no choice, no choice where they grow up in a family that, low income or in a crime area, something like that. We said, we just want them to have an equal education. Let's see what they can do with an equal opportunity. And I think all 4 of us walked away and was like, you know what, that had nothing to do with us, will not help us out at all in life. But we walked away and was like, some kid or a group of kids will benefit from us just taking time and doing that. And there's been a couple different things that have been like that. I've gotten to spend time at the Ron Burton Training Village, which takes kids like in the inner city, Dorchester, and they go away in the summer for like 5 to 7 weeks. And it's a big training village on faith and how to get ahead. And, I've been there multiple times, and to see kids, go through that program and then to go on to school and graduate from colleges is very rewarding as well.
Thank you for that. To piggyback off of that, why is your work off of the field as important as the work on it?
For me, I always think of, life. I lost my father when I was young, so I never really got to know him. But I know like everywhere I go in my hometown, even when I was in like middle school, people would see my last name and people would come up to me and like, hey, are you somehow related to Calvin McCourty? And I'm like, yeah, that was my dad. And they would tell stories, they would say he was a great guy, treated me well. And for me, that's what it's about. On the field is what it is. People will talk about, being a part of a team and doing different things like that, winning. But like what people will tell my kids about someday is what matters to me. And for me, it's how did I make people feel? How did I improve someone else's life? How did I take, what God has blessed me with and figured out how to make blessings go through me to someone else? And I never envisioned that I would be able to be a part of some of the things I'm a part of here in this community. I've always thought like, I would do stuff for sickle cell and be a part of a charity and, try to raise a lot of money, and that would be it. But like people that I can call friends now in different walks of life, to me has been awesome. And now as I get older in my 11th year is trying to figure out how I keep that going, not being a football player, which is sometimes tough. People don't want to come have you speak and do things when you're not a player anymore. So trying to figure all of that out and how to continue my life's path and plan off the field, without having, football will be a challenge, but it's something I'm looking forward to as well.
Thank you for sharing. What does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you, and why are they important to you?
Yeah, I remember back in 2017, we did a listen and learn, what we do with the Players Coalition, where we sat down with a bunch of different people from the ACLU, judges, public defenders, and they just hit us with different facts. And I remember someone said, the average income, average net worth for a Black family in Boston was $8. And I was like, I don't really get what do you mean? And it was like, no, like $8. And for me, that was like, we have so many situations where people end up doing different things. And it's like, well, let's see how we can help. Like, I think everyone on this call knows what opportunity creates hope. And when people have hope, they can go on to do amazing things. They dream to do things, they build things, they create things. But when you come up and there's just no hope there, and you go to school and school is the lead to prison, school to prison pipe. Like when those are the things you look forward to, you don't really care about any positive things. You don't care about your grades. You don't care about improving. You don't care about, making and creating generational wealth for your family. Like those things are unheard of. No one talks about that. But on the other hand, different areas in Massachusetts, and I think especially when you get to be in the NFL, and luckily for me, I've been on the team for 11 years, so I've gotten to have a relationship with our ownership. And, some of the simple things that, even Mr. Kraft talks to me about of, making sure he handles the business with the team so the team is passed down to his kids and then his kids can pass it down to their kids. And I'm like, man, my whole life growing up, I've never got to hear someone say, I own something so I can pass it down to my kids. Like that wasn't in my family. That wasn't really in my hometown. And I think those are the things that when we give that to certain communities, now they can dream and hope and create those things. But it's all about the opportunity and the understanding to have that and know that. And I think that's what's been awesome for me to see all of the great organizations throughout Boston that do that in so many different ways, whether it's Black-owned businesses supporting them, like the organization BECMA, or helping with food and so many different things. It's been awesome for me to see.
Thank you for that, Dev. We have a question in the chat. We see Black players on the field, but are they represented in the management fields?
Oh no, it's the NFL is the real world. It is America. What you see at top companies, call it Google, Amazon, like all of those places, like the NFL is no different. It's a $1 billion industry. And, I won't even say management. We don't see that in our head coaches. We see that a lot of times through the staff of the coaches, assistant coaches, and things like that. We'll see that. But, through head coaches, through general managers, through ownership, you just don't see that, and throughout the league, all 32 teams, like I've only played here in New England, but I would venture to say on all 32 teams, if you walk through their front office of, the marketing people and the media, like all of those different things that are non-players, you won't see many Black people there. It's just what it is. And, I think it's been cool to be a part of some of those players who, as we fight for things outside of football, we never fail to mention that it's hard for us as an overall league to get out there and say like, hey, we need more diversity. When we don't even do that, in the NFL's front office, teams from and I think for players, that's another thing that we try to challenge people on and challenge the NFL on. And you've seen multiple players call out Goodell for talking and speaking. And I think that has a trickle down effect because when we call out Goodell, that calls out our owners. And you see some owners who are involved and want those things. And then there's other owners that just stay clear. And I think where they stand. But I hope someday we see that. The NFL is a tricky thing where the 32 owners have to vote in anybody that wants to become an owner. So it's kind of like what they call the good old boys league, where it'll be hard for, someone that's Black or a minority to get in there unless they accept it. So I'm hoping as our country starts to hopefully change and shift, that the NFL can be kind of a frontline guy in that and be a leader in that situation.
What does it mean to be a person of color to you?
That's a good question. I think for me, it represents the people before me. And I think a lot of people will say that no matter where you're from. But I think it just has a significant meaning in this country. And I think that's why, for me as a player, I stand up for the things I stand up for, because I understand the road has been paved for me. As hard as we talk about some of the things that go on, I think when you think about, 15, 30, 40, 100 years ago, how hard it was for our ancestors to pave the way. And, now I sit in here and make millions of dollars a year playing football. To just sit comfy and think that, everything else is okay, to me would be disrespectful to what my grandmother went through, coming from Virginia and having dogs sicked on her. I remember I wrote a biography on her when I was a kid, and being hosed, and that was my grandmother. Like, that's not that long ago. And I think I represent that. And I think, being a person of color, wherever that might be, whether you're Cape Verdean or you're from Hispanic descent, like, you represent something, and you represent some fight or struggle that someone in your family went through for you to be here. And I think for me, I've been fortunate enough that I've gotten to be on a huge stage and get to, do things and give back. And everyone sees it, all eyes are on it. But, working with you, Jeff, and working with George, like, all you guys do that for your culture, for your families. And it's been awesome to highlight that.
Can you share any experiences you've had with racism and how it's impacted you?
Yeah, it's funny because, here, once your face gets known as an athlete, like, you don't really get that. Everyone is like, man, nah, that's Devin McCourty. Like, nah, we know him. But I remember Andrea Kramer lives in this area, Hall of Fame journalist. She does a race and gender kind of forum, where she used to do it, and it was at Boston University. And I remember being on that panel, and they asked us that, and asked us, as players, do you ever go through that? And Brian Scalabrine was on, and he was like, nah, like, I've been out with KG and Paul Pierce and those guys. Like, no one says anything to those guys. And I was like, well, I mean, like, hold on now. We got to remember, Paul Pierce walking around 6'6", Kevin Garnett 7 foot. Like, when people see them, they know that, And I remember when I first moved up here, and, I live in Foxborough, and I'm at the local Stop and Shop, and, an older white woman walks by me, and, I stop my cart to, let her go. And as she walks by me, like, no hesitation, no cares in the world, walks slowly and just grills me head to toe, stares me down. And at that time, we had just got up here. I was a rookie, and I was with my roommate, and me and him looked at each other, and he was like, nah, cuz, that's not right. And I was like, easy, man. Like, that's just how it is. And for me, it's very eye-opening, because when you join the NFL, you have guys from all over. And I remember Stephen Ridley, he's from Jackson, Mississippi. And he talked about, when he's down in Mississippi, there's still towns and areas that you don't go to. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, you don't go to those towns. And I think for us as athletes, when you stay in the area where you're known or you play at, it's one thing. But, when you leave that area, it doesn't change. Like, you're just a black man. I remember Randy Moss used to always say, excuse my language, Randy Moss is different though. He'd be like, man, when I'm done playing in NFL, I'm gonna move to some other country where I could just be a nigga. They won't care about me catching balls or nothing. I just want to, and I'll be like, man, like, that is just crazy to think about, but how much our life changes, when you are an athlete, but how much it really stays the same, because you're just a black man first.
In your opinion, how can we end racism? What conversations do we need to have? How can we bridge the gap?
Yeah, man, I wish so much, like when we sit in our locker room is diverse. We have black, white, Samoan, like we have so many different men in that room, and we all come together because we want to win football games. But through that, we all get to know each other. We get to know each other's families. And I would say most importantly, we trust each other. So we get to, like, through this time, we get to have like real conversations. I'm talking about where we're talking, and we got grown men in tears talking about having to talk to their kids about racism and talk to their kids about what to do when they get pulled over someday. And through that, I've had white players come up to me and say, like, I've never thought about, if my kid got pulled over, if I got pulled over. And like through those conversations, like I truly believe like those guys leave and they're like, man, I gotta raise my kids with a certain awareness that racism exists. And if they're not intentional about it, then it'll continue. And I wish we can take that and put that all over the world, in the country. But it will only come from raising our kids to be intentional about knowing racism exists. I think for so long, we tried to say like, racism happened, but it's not now. So if we just treat everyone the same and act like it doesn't exist, we'll be good. But that's just not right, because then we just overlook all of the systems and different things that were put in place years ago that continue racism. And it might not be open racism. It might not be as obvious as we've seen when Trump got in office, but it still exists. So I think if we teach, the next generation, it probably won't happen the next generation, but hopefully look, daddy's on the call. Yes, go get one. And I think if we do that, then we'll have a chance to fix that, years later. And, probably none of us will be here, but, I think for our kids, maybe they'll have a chance to grow up in a world where they can just be themselves and be judged that way.
Has there ever been a time where one of your teammates made an insensitive comment and you had to respond to it?
I wouldn't say insensitive to the point of like they don't know what they're saying, like almost as like someone says something, but I would say to an ignorant standpoint of like, everyone has a chance for free education, or everyone has a chance to go work and get a job. And, it's just ignorance. And I've taken that chance, and especially now because like 2020 has been like everyone texting me or calling me and they're like, hey, how can I help? How can I help? And I'm like, I'm like everybody else. I'm human. So at first I was like, well, you could have helped back in 2018 when I was in the locker room telling guys to come do this or come do that. But now y'all want, and I was like, hold on, you got to check yourself sometimes. Like people want to have an open ear. And I think because of when I've gotten comments like that, it's given me a chance to educate guys. Like, well, let me tell you about what happens in lower income places. Let me tell you about schools and areas that are probably not far from where you live, like in Brockton, where they don't have a full-time science teacher, or there's no PE teacher, or like when we went to Lynn, Massachusetts, and for some of those kids, stop guys, stop, that had English as a second language, they take them in the hallway and teach them in the hallway in a small, and I was like, so like when you talk about all of these things that people have the same opportunities, I was like, you just don't know. And I was like, you're not taking the time to get to know different things. I was like, there's so many resources here. I was like, you can go literally upstairs to one of our lawyers, Robin Glazer's office, and tell her you want to learn what happens in Black and brown communities in Boston. I was like, within a day, she'll have you set up to go ride along with the police, go to a different organization or take, I was like, so like, until you do that, don't come to me. And, I'm passionate when I speak. So that turns into, me kind of ripping somebody, but I think it's necessary because when you do that, that person now walks away and educates someone else. You can't kind of just turn a blind eye or just curse someone out without educating them on, why things happen through the history of our country.
We have a question in the chat. From your experiences here in Boston, what do you feel is the best defense against racism?
I think one thing, like I mentioned, is educating them, and then I think it's coming together. You know, I think of the different organizations that are out there and the different ways that people have come together, like with the district attorney race a couple years ago, where everyone thought the incumbent was gonna, his next kind of protege was gonna win, and even watching like Trial 4 and seeing how even them thinking like, all right, this district attorney gonna get in here is gonna be more of the same. But I think with racism, when Black and brown people first come together and educate ourselves and know what we need to do, we realize how powerful our voice is. And you've seen that with the election this year. And I think when you do those things, you're able to fight systems a lot better than when one person goes or this person or it's scattered. It's harder to fight and bring down some of those systems. But when people join together and they're out there, no matter even if you see some differences and want to have a different approach, but when you just do it together, I think you have a chance to really fight some of these systematic things. And I think, for me, that's my plan, going forward, like with the NFL, like as we fight as players together and not divided as players, like we're going to see more Black coaches. We're going to see that show up because owners can't get away from it. You can't talk and do things without hearing players say that. And I think that's been, the key, I think, even for us. I remember having a conversation with Mr. Kraft and I was like, straight up, like, Kaepernick's being blackballed. Like, I know you're a part of the league and I know you say, you talk to other owners, it's not true. I said, but from a player standpoint, you can't tell me that's not true. I said, because I see a lot of really bad quarterbacks in the NFL that go out there and play every week, but this guy doesn't even get an opportunity. And I think the more guys say that and the more it happens, obviously for Cap, it hasn't worked, but I think moving forward with some systematic things, you'll start to see change.
Thank you for that, Devin. I wanted to open it up to see, before I continue with the prepared questions, anyone have a question that you'd like to ask out loud? Anyone in the audience? No? Everyone being shy?
I'll ask one.
No, I'll talk.
Hey, I got a question. What does mentorship look like for you and your brother growing up in inner city and then going off to New Jersey? What did your mentorship look like?
So for me, I had my older brother who joined the Army. And then when he came home from the Army, I would say even for him, it was a little bit of a struggle of trying to figure out, what he wanted to do. He went straight from high school into the Army for about 4.5 years. So like, honestly, for me, like I had my mom, and then I would say a lot of what I saw from the male influences in my life was kind of like what not to do. I have an uncle who really was a drug dealer. He ended up being in prison for about 18 years. I had another uncle who was addicted to drugs. And, I think for me, I saw those things and I was like, well, I know that's not what I want to do. And I feel like I was fortunate enough to get a couple different teachers. I had a female teacher in elementary school, and then probably one of my biggest mentors. And we didn't have a great relationship, but when I was in 8th grade, we had a science teacher who also, he talked about being Black. He talked about, like, he was a funny guy, would crack jokes and talk about him being Black. So he did certain things, and he was a teacher. And like, for me, I was like, damn, like, that's cool. Like, here Mr. Bennett is, he's a teacher. Like, he's teaching us. He took a interest in helping, the Black kids in the class. But, I try to tell, even kids that I meet today who will say that to me, like, well, no one cares if I do well, and no, I don't have anyone, like, no men are there. And I'm like, well, you got to break the cycle. Like, somebody has to break the cycle. And I think for me, the biggest thing was having a twin brother. So there was times that I wanted to do the wrong thing, but we did everything together. And I was a little bit more the wild one. So Jay would be the one like, no, we're not doing that. Like, no. And it would pull me back, or I would pull him back. And I think we were very fortunate that way of having each other, but never really had like that true, I would say, mentor that I could look to and call and get advice from. But my mom played a lot of different roles, I'll say.
Anyone else have a question you'd like to ask Allah?
Sure. What kept you consistent throughout like college, throughout high school, basically growing up, probably Pop Warner, high school, college, and then to the league. Like, who like really motivated you? I know you said your twin brother, but like, who really like motivated you, and what kept you like consistent in what you do?
Yeah, I would say my biggest motivation was making it to help my mom. I know for me, when I was in elementary and middle school and high school, it was easy because my mom was an enforcer. She got hurt on her job when we were 5, so she collected a disability check. Ended up having like 12 knee surgeries, but through that, my mom was always home. So I remember, in middle school, like there'd be a fight after school, and everyone would go to one place for that fight. And so I got off the bus and was like, all right, we'll just walk home. But got home super late, and you're like, nah, ma, like we had to stop at a, and some of my friends got home and their parents were still at work, but my mom was like, I'm telling y'all right now, you do that again, it's gonna be trouble when you get in this house. And I had that my whole life. So when I first went away to college, it was kind of adjusting. But like I said, like when I found out my mom went bankrupt and different things like that, I just wanted it, and I think my mom and that foundation of, doing my schoolwork and trying to be the best helped me throughout my college career of, doing what I need to do off the field and on the field. But for me, like just the truth is I just want to break the cycle. Like I didn't want to just, graduate and then get it like every day 9 to 5. And like, that was just my goal. Like I wanted to play in the NFL. I remember even, coming up, like I didn't play at all as a freshman, and, I only had one offer to Rutgers. So you go by the stats, I mean, I had a low chance of making it. But I just wanted to be fearless in my pursuit. I remember people always saying, we want to be a professional athlete, you got to have a plan B, and I was like, all that's great. And you do want to have that. But I told my mom, I was like, my plan B is getting my college education, is graduating. Like if I graduate, I told my mom, I was like, I'll find something to do. But I was like, I have to, for myself, give plan A everything. Like I got to train, I got to do everything I can to see if I can make this work. Because why not me? Like, why not be a guy that can play in the league? And, even when I made it, I didn't think I'd be in the league for 10 years. But, if you just put your head down and keep working and don't look up until the end, I feel like you never know where you'll be at. So, I think for me, my mom and my family of how we grew up really motivated me. And then, as you start to do successful things, and you start to be around your family, and now you're telling them things that you learn. Like when I was a kid, a steakhouse to me was like Outback, Longhorn, and I got to the NFL and people was like, hey man, you want to go to Ruth Chris, Morton's? I was like, I've never heard of that. And like, I think about my life now, like I've taken my mom to nice restaurants or nice hotel, like some of those like materialistic things that don't mean much at the end. But like when you don't know those things exist, being successful opens you up to so many different things, opens you up to understanding about generational wealth, understanding about all of these different things. Like my financial advisor said to me, he's like, yeah, you're at the point now as you keep putting money in your savings, you can save that for your kids. I was like, what you mean? He was like, yeah, you can pay for your kids to go to school, and then your kids will go to school. And I remember, because when he said that, I remember sitting down with a guy who was a part of Yahoo when it first started. And he said, my kids will go to school for free for 3 generations. And I was like, dang, like that's crazy. And I remember sitting there thinking like, man, like I'll never be able to do that. And things like that, like for me has opened my eyes and like made me want to do more and want to like educate people more, and like especially in what we do for a living, like being athletes. And you know, it means you got to have a nice car, you got to do this, you got to do that. But you start learning from different people who have had money for a long time. They don't care about that stuff. Like they do that with their money that makes money, but like what they really care about is like creating more wealth, creating more assets. So for me, it's been cool, and I've been motivated, I would say, each step of my life by doing more and learning from other people.
Thanks, Dev, for sharing that. Go ahead.
Hey, Jeff. Dev, good to see you, my friend. Really quick, I just want to say thank you, obviously, for being here. But so you're the fifth most famous Black athlete I met in Boston, and you'll love this story because the other four were Hank Aaron, Willie Mays during the '99 All-Star game here, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at Bunker Hill. But the one that comes to mind when I think about you is Bill Russell. So Bill Russell, I met him at the Blackstone School during an event, and Bill Russell won 11 championships here in Boston, including being the only player coach to ever win an NBA title. And of course, they treated him so bad here. It was unbelievable. They broke into his house. They defecated in his bed. He said he would receive, being called the N-word more here in Boston than he would on the road. He got a key to the city one night, and then they wouldn't even let him into a restaurant to celebrate with his teammates in South Boston. So to see where you are today and to hear like what you went through and to think about how much we progressed because what he went through and where, this city was, we have hope now. We still know that inequality is still the largest here in the city of Boston compared to any other major city in America. But we have hope now because we have people like you who kind of come out here and talk to us and give us a chance to follow, right? And I would just want to really take this opportunity to let everyone know that you've really kind of been a mentor to me and Jeff, and we've watched you grow and to understand like the history for those other athletes that I happen to meet wasn't so good. And now hopefully the history for the following athletes after you will be really, an exciting time. So thank you, my friend.
No, it's funny you say that because a lot of like when I got to this area, obviously I knew who Bill Russell was, but when they put that statue up of him and they started interviewing him and he was talking about his time in Boston, I remember watching a special on NBA TV, and he talked about that, like not being able to go in the front door of the hotel and having to go in the back door, and he said like he didn't come back here because it was some of the worst times of his life. And to me, that was like, man, like you got, like you just said, probably the greatest champion in all of sports. Talk about a city that I'm playing in and get treated great because of how I play. And I've gone to Celtics games and they put us on the big screen and people are cheering. And I was like, man, if that's not like a wake up call of like what people did before you, like I don't know what is. And he inspired me a lot, just learning more about his story. Because you're here, you're playing in this city now, and he's great. But like when you actually hear his personal account of what he went through, definitely inspired me to try to do more and have a bigger impact on the city and where we play off the field. So I appreciate that. I always tell people, no matter what you say about my Patriot legacy, people always have to say, man, Devin McCourty was a guy that did a lot off the field. And a lot of people, and it is, to me, the greatest thing about that is any record or any like great plays and Super Bowls, like all of that will be done again. But like the impact you can have on people's lives, that only can happen one time and in that one moment. And like I said earlier, like it's awesome because it's not just me on our team. Like we have so many guys that we inspire each other to go out there and do more. And like you said, I really hope like the next crop of guys take over and do it big. And one of the reasons why I'm still playing is because I want to be able to pass that torch on to somebody that I know that they'll be able to do it and keep the Patriots in the forefront of having a big impact in the city.
Indy, you have a question?
Yes, good evening. I am one of the Commissioner of Property Management, but I'm also one of the advisors for the B.E.N Millennial. And my most important job is being a mother of a young Black man. And although it's one of the most important job I have, it's one of the scariest job. And there's a lot of stats that talks about a Black man is supposed to either be in jail or dead. And we're not about raising or helping anyone with any statistic. We have a particular job to raise them. So the question I have, and I always say this quote, an educated Black man is a dangerous man. What is your advice for young Black men on the importance of education? And it doesn't have to be a formal education in college, but it could be some sort of trade or what have you. What is your advice for a young Black man?
To go get one. I'll tell you a story. So my nephew, my older brother, his oldest kid, he's now, he just turned 20 and graduated high school and still has not done anything else. And we get into it a lot with him because, 20 years old, odd jobs here and there, and he'll hit me and Jay up and ask for money. And I'll tell him like, and we've sent multiple text messages. I'm like, I'm telling you right now, I will pay for anything you choose to do. I said, if you want to be a mechanic, you want to go to HVAC and get your certification, I was like, I'll help you do that. But he wants to be a rapper right now. And I was like, I said, I will not give you a dime towards you rapping. I was like, and it's not that I don't believe in you. I said, but if you go get a job, I said that I will help you get, and you get a career, you can rap and do as much as that you want in your free time. But I said, you have a daughter. You need an education because you need a career. And like you said, a Black man is dangerous when he's educated because now he can do everything. I got to play here with Martellus Bennett, football player, huge human beings, like 6'7", 270. And like, his name's Martellus, tatted from neck down, and you meet him, like, hey, what's up, man, Devin? And Buddy goes, hey, man, I'm Marty. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, bro, how many 6'7" Black men go by Marty? But you get to know him. He has his own imagination agency. He writes books. He makes short films. And this is a guy that played in NFL, but because he educated himself, he went to college and all that, but he educated himself on a field he was passionate about. And that was writing books and that was telling stories. He now has post-football something to fall back on. And I think for us, especially as Black men and even Black women, like, athletics is so important to us. It's ingrained in our culture, and a lot of us want to pursue those things. But no matter what, every person will be a former athlete, whether that happens in youth sports, middle school, high school, college, professional, you will be former. And that education is what you rely on, whether it's something you learn about in school, whether it's a networking thing you happen to have when you were, either working for someone as an intern, just anything you do that involves educating yourself. And when I say educating yourself, just learning something that you don't know yet. And whenever you do that, somehow you build a bridge, you meet somebody. And I think through that, you have a chance to now have a career and have a plan in life. And that's one thing I would say when I was young, I didn't really know. I didn't understand. Like, I knew to go to school and get an education because my mom, she said that to me all the time. But I didn't realize by getting an education and meeting people, I would build networks and find out things that I wanted to do in life that I was passionate about. That happened later. So that's something I try to teach young men and women when they're in middle school and high school and they're a part and their teachers or someone comes in to speak and, they're like, man, I'm interested in that. Get their email address, find out those different things. So I even as a professional athlete, education is still the biggest thing to me that I use, whether that's doing interviews, media stuff, being a voice for different people, like all of that comes back to what I've learned through school and from other people, not through learning how to run and tackle somebody.
Go ahead, Dominique.
We'll just preface this question by apologizing if it's something that you've already touched on. I had to move my car. This is no emergency. But I just wanted to say first that I've been following your career. I'm not usually a football fan, but I was very impressed that you and your brother got involved in the DA race here in Boston and Suffolk County a few years ago. And also saw that you guys were honored by Mass Communities Action Network last year for your activism and for your social justice work. So I just want to know, what is it that brought you guys, both of you, to social justice work, to being community activists? It's extremely unusual to have a football player come to Boston, go to anywhere in the city that they're not from, another city that they're not from, and take such a passionate stance about uplifting the community that they're coming into. So was there something that pushed you? Was there something, how did you guys decide to get involved in that work? Not only where you're from, but also making a name for yourselves in that area here in Boston. Curious to hear.
Yeah, I think it kind of happened over time. And I would start off by saying like why I want to do stuff here.
I think you might be muted.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear him.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like why I first started wanting to do things here is because like I graduated college and I got here, I was 22 years old. And all of my growth as an adult happened in the New England area. So yeah, I'm from New York, and that's where I grew up, high school and all of that. But like as an adult, like different lifelong lessons happen here in this community. So I always felt like, how could you not be a part of a community? How could you not be a part of a community where thousands of people come out and support you on Sunday, cheer for you? And then how I ended up being, I would say involved in all these different social issues started from like when I was a rookie. When you're a rookie, you live by yourself. I had a lot of free time. So like every Tuesday, we would have different events that you could go to, like playground builds and different things like that. And then every once in a while, we'd be in an area, or the Thanksgiving giveaway would be in Roxbury, and we'd be in an area and someone would come up to me and be like, man, it's so good seeing you. How come y'all never come here? Or how come y'all never come to Dorchester? Or y'all never come to Mattapan? And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I got no idea. Like, the team set this up, so I just come, like, I'm not sure. And then like kind of just going on a limb, like meeting people, and I'll be like, yeah, man, this is my email address. Shoot me an email. And they'll email me something. And I remember my rookie year, I did a turkey giveaway in Providence. And I was like, man, like, this is cool. Like, I don't know nothing about this area, but like all the people that was coming, I was like, all right, like they're either Hispanic or they look like, I'm like, all right, like I like this. And, as I've gotten to go to different places and then meet different people at events, like I went to a couple of events at Morning Star Church. And then like through there, I started to meet different people, and they're like, you need to be here, you need to be there. Or I was with Robin and then met Jeff and George, and they're like, hey man, like let us take you to Bromley Heath and walk around there. And I was like, all right, cool. Like I'll go there then. And for me, it was like, all right, like I'm meeting people who, when they see me, they're like, man, his life is similar to me. Like I want to be like that. And I know for me growing up, one of the hardest things of having a dream to be a professional athlete was I felt like that was like super far. And I remember having this conversation with George, and he said that he was like, there's people who grew up right in Boston and some of the projects in Boston. And he said they look over there at like the Prudential Center, and they look over there at those nicer areas. And he was like, they think that it's so far from them because their mind is so like stuck in just being at where they're at. And I know for me, I didn't have any athletes around me. There were no professional athletes that I saw. So like when I used to think about that, I'm like, man, that would be cool someday. But like that's a slim chance. Like that's just far. And like, it wasn't until I was like, you know what, like I gotta just want to do it. And now being a professional athlete, like I want to be in communities where people are like, man, like, dang, that's your story. Like, dang, like, all right, like that's not that hard. Like I can do it. And I want people to have that feeling. And so like, that's why like I love giving back and doing things. And I like doing things that don't always involve football, because like when we did that district attorney thing, we did that forum, people are sitting there like, man, these football players, like, damn, they kind of know what they're talking about. Like, all right, they speak well. And, as a Black man, I know like a lot of when you go speak well, people are like, oh man, you speak well. And sometimes you be sitting there like, yeah, man, you saw my bio that I graduated college. Like, why wouldn't I speak well? And for me, like, I love those things because I'm going to meet a lot more young Black kids that are not going to be athletes, that are going to want to do other things, maybe be politicians, lawyers, doctors, like, I don't know, coach, teachers. And like, they're going to have to do these things well. And like, I like when they see like, all right, like I can love sports right now and still, you know, get an education and speak well later. So I think I've been encouraged and motivated by those things. I do. I feel like God has blessed me. Like my life is not special, but a lot of special things have happened to me. And I feel like because of that, you know, I've gotten a platform that I can affect, you know, change, and I can have people see God and see the work that He's done in my life, and inspire them. And, you know, for me, that's been a blessing all in itself.
Go ahead, Albert.
My question is, how did you overcome bad influences in school to get to where you are right now?
You said bad influences?
Yeah, in school, yeah.
You know, I think for me, like school is like a lot of people, like you had your group of friends that like didn't care and like wanted to be the class clowns, laugh, joke, and then, hey buddy. And then I think for me, I love sports. So I love playing football. And like I said, my mom she was one of those moms. And I remember getting a C on a spelling test and having a Pop Warner football game that weekend. And my mom was like, you'll play this weekend, but that spelling test next week, if it's not an A or a B, you can forget about that game next Sunday. And my mom was the type that like when she threatened you, like you knew it was real because you got enough spankings and different things like that, that you knew when she said it, like that was gonna be what it was. And for me, that always influenced me away from the different bad influences. Like if people were going and doing the wrong thing, like, you know, that age around 13, 14, when a lot of my friends was like starting to get into smoking weed and different things like that, I knew for me, I was like, man, I want to play sports. And I wasn't like this super gifted athlete growing up. Like I went to high school, I was like 5'9", 120 pounds. So like, I wasn't like a kid who walked through that you was like, man, like that's a stud right there. Like, I can't wait to see him play. So I always thought if I did anything bad to my body that I would lose my shot to play in the NFL or NBA or anything like that. So I didn't want to do those things. So I always tell young kids to create goals, and every day of your life, you'll know what you want to do. You know your goals, and I'm like, don't have one. Like if you want to be 5 different things, be 5 different things. You're 12 years old. But I was like, each day, make a decision. Like if somebody wants to do something, ask yourself, does this get me closer to my goal or does it go the other way? And if it goes the other way, just keep going towards your goal. Skip it. Forget about it. Because I was like, I promise you, some of that stuff you miss out on, you'll look back in life at wherever you're at and you'll be like, man, like that probably would have been fun. But like what I'm doing right now is like what I dreamed of. Like when I wake up and like today, we was in the building until 6 o'clock. Like we usually out by 5 o'clock. We was in there a whole hour later. And as pissed off as I was that we got out late, at the end of the day, I'm still like, I get to work and make a living doing something that I dreamed about doing when I was 5 years old. When I was a kid, I used to dream about doing this. And it all was from, like you said, just not choosing to go down the bad or the wrong path. And a lot of that just had, you know, some of it was fear of my mom, fear of, you know, major consequences of not going that way. But ultimately it came down to trying to always make the right decision to push towards a goal that I wanted.
Thanks, Devin. Thanks to those who asked questions. Wanted to get some people in the room a little engaged. Dev, can you talk a little bit more about Tackle Sickle Cell? I know you talked a little bit about it earlier, but you know, you've been a avid champion for sickle cell and sickle cell research. Can you talk a little more about it? What motivates you to keep going, to keep getting people involved?
Yeah, so sickle cell, like I said, runs in my family. My grandfather had his legs amputated when I was like 5 or 6 years old because of sickle cell. And then my father had the sickle cell trait. So when I was young, I remember having to go in and give blood to see if the trait got passed down to me and my brother. And fortunate enough, we didn't have the trait. And, you know, my father had an asthma attack that led to a heart attack because he had bad asthma. And sometimes all that's kind of associated with sickle cell being in your family. But my dad was actually a twin, and his twin brother and my aunt, his sister, both had the disease. Both had sickle cell disease. And so look, my aunt, my uncle wasn't around much, but my aunt really took on the role of like trying to be our connection for my dad being gone. And like you just said, my aunt traveled the world. She had a job that she went to every day. She went to multiple countries, and it was because of what you just said. Like my aunt didn't drink. She always had water and stuff with her. And, you know, even because of that, like my aunt went legally blind in both eyes. She was on oxygen 24/7 towards the end of her life. But her doctor told her when she was 10 years old, told her she'd be fortunate enough to see 35. My aunt lived till she was 69. And she was the biggest reason why we got into sickle cell, because it was awesome meeting young people who were like 18 and their parents coming up to us. And, you know, we had a couple different parents and was like, hey, I'm so blessed that because of what you guys do and your aunt's story that you tell. He said, because my kid is trying to do everything so fast. They're so worried that they're not going to live long enough to do things, that they're trying to do everything by as soon as they turn 21, they want to drink and go crazy because they think of their life being such a short-term thing. And like that really opened my eyes up to see the impact of that. Because when you have a disease like that and, you know, doctors tell you, you know, the life expectancy and all of that, but you meet, you know, someone who knows someone and they're telling you their story and they're 69 years old. And even when she was 69 years old, she had her oxygen tank wheel behind her. She was Jehovah's Witness. And she used to make me mad because she lived in Orlando and she would be going door to door witnessing and trying to get people to witness him. I'm like, Aunt Winnie, it's 90 degrees. Like, you're not supposed to do those things. But you couldn't tell her anything. Like, she was as tough as nails. And like, I think Jason and myself, when we first got into it, we kind of did it because we wanted to make her proud. And she loved that we did it. But the stories and the impact that her story had on other people, for me was amazing. And because of our work, I've had so many articles and emails of people like that author you're speaking about. You hear stories of a guy that's 80 years old, and like I hear that, I'm passing that on to a bunch of young kids that, you know, have sickle cell. So it's been very rewarding seeing so many young people have dreams and then realize they can go to college away from their family and be fine. They just have to learn how to navigate it, going to the hospital, getting to know the doctors. But between the people we've met with a group called Embrace Kids and then the Next Step program in Cambridge, I know multiple kids who are in college succeeding, and they don't have to worry as much because of the funds we raise and because of the doctors and their parents and different program directors that are teaching them how to live with sickle cell. So sickle cell is still one of the biggest and I'll say probably one of the proudest things that I've been able to be a part of.
Thank you for sharing that, Dev. I joined your recent fundraiser when Patrina Cherry was speaking, and I was very impressed by, very impressed by the event and the people who were speaking and stuff like that. So
yeah, you gotta come when we get out of this COVID. We have that casino night. It's good times, man. It's good times.
I'll be there. So I have a question that not only do you care about education in your hometown of New York, but you and your brother have taken an initiative to help students here in Boston by donating $50,000 to a school in East Boston. What made you both get together to think of a way to help hundreds of students during the pandemic to finally have access to computers when the school districts and families could not provide them to the students?
Just what we were going through with the pandemic. Like, here I am, professional athlete, and that pandemic was affecting me, and, you know, not being able to see my mom and all those different, to me, like little things, like not a big deal. Like like every parent, your kids were driving you crazy if you had to be home all day with them and they had no outlet for anything. But like you started to think about like different people, like kids that counted on school lunch, you know, when they went in every day, and you know, people who were losing their jobs, and different people who had, you know, essential jobs who had to go to work, but now their kids weren't in school and their kids didn't know how to, you know, how they were going to get the lesson plans and different things like that. And I remember texting J-Mac and was like, man, we got to figure out like what we want to do. And it was like, it wasn't one thing because the pandemic affected so much. So we found different like food banks and stuff. We donated money there. And then the big thing, because of education, we started Chromebooks for kids in 2 school districts that we were a part of supplying schools. And then again, through the Players Coalition, because like I said, when you can do things together in groups, it has a larger impact. We were able to grant 11 different schools across the country, and the Greater Eccleston School in East Boston was one of them. But there was like, I think 7 or 8 different players who we all got to grant schools different funds of money. It was a total like $325,000 that went to schools in different areas that, you know, we found of need. And all of that comes from the Players Coalition, because now we have a panel of people that we've hired to go out there and research and find different things, and to meet with different experts to give. So that was kind of a no-brainer of figuring out things through the coalition and then through my hometown of how to help out. And it's hard because you help out one group and you're like, dang, but there's so much more that we can do. And that's been the hard part, but it definitely helps to be able to help some people out.
I commend you for that. You know, you and your brother are always stepping up, but then the Players Coalition, you guys really come together from social justice to helping people during the pandemic. It's remarkable work, you know, to see our, you know, athletes stepping up and doing those things. You know, it's one of those things where people talk about New England teams, New England Celtics, Patriots, and you're like, but look what they do off the field. And for me, it's always important to acknowledge that, you know, you all always step up and always do the right thing, even though you don't have to, right? Like you said, you were riding in police cruisers with us, you know, walking through Bromley Heath and walking through the Villa, you know, learning about the city, which is important, right? Because you only live 30 minutes away. And so it's important to do that work. Let's shift over to your podcast. Whose idea was it to start Double Coverage? What are some of the topics you guys have discussed, and topics that you guys plan on discussing? And also, for someone who has not listened to your podcast, what would be, you know, your pitch line for them to hop on?
The podcast really came from like our marketing guy was like, when Jay got traded here in 2018, was like, man, you guys should do a podcast. And I was like, I don't know, that sounds like a lot of work. And we decided to do it because it was a way, like you guys know, we do a lot of interviews and media every day with the team. And it was like, when you do those medias, it's like someone asks you a question and you answer the question. And you don't always get to like tell what you want to tell. And we felt like a podcast would give us a great time to share content and stuff that like we felt was important. And through our podcast, like we talk sports, obviously, and we do that. But we've had podcasts where, hold on, buddy. We've had podcasts where we've gone on and we've interviewed this guy, Quinn M. Williams, who was an FBI agent and a former police officer. And we talked about policing. We talked about all of those different things. And like, normally you can't do that in an interview, but the podcast has allowed us the freedom to do whatever comes to our mind. So during the pandemic, we had a bunch of our guys that I went to college with. One was a high school football coach, one's a banker, one's a cop in Miami. And we just talked. We talked about being Black. We talked about choosing career paths and going with it. And like things like that for Jason and myself, because of all stuff we do in the community, we felt like it was important to be able to voice and do those things. And through the podcast, I would say we've developed more and more of like, hey man, like I'm angry about something that happened here. We're jumping on the podcast. When I re-signed to come back to the Patriots, instead of telling some reporter, nah, we're gonna jump on our own podcast and create our own outlet. And I think it's what everyone does now. Like, how can you create your own anything, you know, your own business, your own platform, your own app. And for us, that's what our podcast is. It's the McCourty twins. It's our own entity. It's something that we do, and we control all of the content. Even on Nesson, you know, now that we're on Nesson this year, when they came to us, I was like, yeah, as long as they know, like, all creative, what's the name, that's on us. And for me, that's what's been cool about it. Like this year in Nesson, we started off with Black Lives Matter t-shirts. Like, we've been able to do that, I think, because of who we've been in the community, all the things we've done. We have a reputation that people respect, and it allows us to speak on things that we think is important. And for me, that's been humbling and a great experience.
How has it been received with your peers? You guys get other people that want to do the same thing, that are inspired by what you do?
Yeah, it's funny because we got like Josh McDaniels, Nick Casario, kind of like our GM. They'll be like, when are we gonna get on the podcast? When are we gonna get on the podcast? I'm like, man, whenever y'all want to come on the podcast and talk, you can. So it's been received well. Like, we got different guys, like Chase Winovich has his own YouTube channel. Obviously Julian Edelman does a ton of stuff, and we steal ideas from him. He steals ideas from us. But I would say it's been really cool because, like, the guys show up and come on the show. Like, guys will come on the show for 10 minutes, 45 minutes. And I think one of the best experiences was in this off season. Former teammate Logan Ryan got to come on, and he gave like a behind the scenes look at like what he went through in Tennessee, of wanting to go back to Tennessee. And people always think players only want the money, but Tennessee didn't offer him a contract. And he talked about like how that affected him and how he wanted to be there. And it was cool for me because I think fans got to hear that side of his story that you don't always get to tell, because like the mainstream media, unless you have like some gossip or dirt to spew, like other than that, they don't want to just tell your story. But for us, like, man, it's just a hangout. Like, we want it to be nice and chill, and he got to tell that story, and that was one of our like most viewed episodes because it was kind of like behind the scenes, and to me, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity of logging on and watching some of your podcasts, and I think they're dope. They're pretty cool, and you know, you're elevating your platform. But I think for, you know, the next generation, for the younger people, it's telling them that they can do it too, right? They can create a platform to elevate their voices, whether they're talking about gang violence or economic inequalities and things of that nature. They too can do it. We have a question in the chat. It says, how are you able to juggle family life and work life?
You see the juggle of the family life and work life, kids running around. My wife probably about to look at me in the next 10 minutes like, you about to help put them to sleep. I hope you know that. But honestly, man, for me, it's been, my wife is, she's a rock. You know, she does a lot when I go to different dinners and galas and different things like that, or I'm on virtual meetings and you see, like, I started this meeting off, like, if I'm on a virtual meeting with you guys, or I'm in a virtual meeting with the team, they know at any time my kids will be on screen because when I'm home, my biggest thing is I want to be dad. Like, I want to be dad when I'm home. I don't want to do all of this work and then all of that, and my kids don't know me. And like I said, I'm always motivated and influenced and mentored by different people and my peers. And Matt Slater, a guy 13 years on the Patriots, and a guy I look up to a lot, once told me, he said, it doesn't matter what you do in the community, off the field, on the field, if you don't lead your family the right way. So I always try to put my family first. And sometimes that comes with having conversations with my wife about, you know, like, all right, am I doing too much? Like, what you got from me? And taking that criticism or what she has from me. But I'll say the other factor is how much she is into giving back to the community and wants to be in the community. And, you know, all the things I do, she fully supports. And a lot of things we do are together, like the decisions we make and donating or being a part of different organizations, all comes from her backing as well. So Hopefully I get some cool points because she's standing in the other room listening to me. But the juggling is a lot easier, I think, when your family goals and your morals as a family are all tied in together. Because everything I do is what we do. We do it together. So it's not easy, but you start to learn how to do things. Like I've been playing football 11 years. Like I know how to balance playing football and doing other things. Then I had to learn once I had kids how to balance now being a dad and and being a husband. So it's been fun, and I've navigated. Sometimes I'm really good at it, and sometimes I'm not good at it. And I have a reminder and a wife that is honest with me and open with me.
We appreciate that. You're a hero everywhere, at home, in the field, in the community. We all appreciate you.
Trying to.
We have a question here. It says, in your experience, do you feel like Boston is set to attract or retain young Black talent professionally?
Oh, definitely. I think so. I think you see, for one, just from a sports standpoint, how many athletes want to play in this area. And I seen like even Tristan Thompson just got here, and I guess he had tweeted about something in the community, and then someone tweeted me and was like, Tristan, you should link with the McCourty twins. They're always in the community doing things. And I think that's so cool. Like the relationship I've gotten to build with Jaylen Brown, who blows me away because dude's like 22, 23 years old, and how much he's involved, how much he speaks out. And to me, it's so impactful and so big because like when I first got here, I didn't have that ability. I had to learn that as I grew as a person. So to see him do those things blows me away. But at the same time, it is awesome to see all of the different athletes want to do these things, want to be in the community, and understand, it kind of skipped a generation with like the Michael Jordans, the Deion Sanders, like all those big time guys, like they kind of never really like got involved. But like if you looked at the generation athlete before them, Muhammad Ali, the Bill Russells, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all of those guys were like active. They talked about this stuff. And I feel like now we're moving towards that. Obviously, to me, the leader in all of that is LeBron James because of who he is and his impact and what he does. And I think, hopefully the next generation of talent and guys will want to come to Boston because they see what being an athlete is all about now.
I appreciate that. Carlita?
Sorry, yes, thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Devin. I thoroughly enjoying everything you're talking about today, but I do realize we have something in common, and maybe a few other of us on this call, is that you're a twin. And I don't know if I'm a twin, I know Jeff is a twin, maybe there's some other twins on this call, but can you talk about what's that experience like? Do you get compared a lot? I have a fraternal brother, so I don't have another woman to compete with or anything of that sort, but what has been the twin experience within your success or your experiences, or overall just a sibling, and how that maybe or may have not had anything to do with your upbringing? So really curious to hear about that.
Again, I'm gonna commend my mom. My mom figured out how to like have twins and bond them together, because like you said, like our whole life is about us going like head to head. Like that's all anybody's ever cared about since we were kids. Who wins when you guys fight, who's faster, who's stronger. Like that's all anyone talks about, and it's really never changed our whole life. And somehow she did something to make us super close and as competitive as we are, like against each other, when we're playing video games or like growing up one-on-one basketball, stuff like that. Like publicly, like we've never let like that go out where people can see us. And just like quickly, like recapping, like even just our professional careers, like he got drafted in 2009. He was a 6th round draft pick. And then the following year I came out of college, I was a 1st round draft pick. So off rip, in the NFL, a dream. Like we're both in the NFL. Now, why you a 1st round pick and your brother a 6th round pick? You better than your brother, right? Like that's all anybody said. And then I come to New England, he goes to Tennessee. he never makes the playoffs for 10 until his 10th year. I'm here. I go to 3 Super Bowls, win 2 of the 2 Super Bowls, Pro Bowls, and anytime he did an interview, everything would be like, are you jealous of your brother? Like, how is it? Does he rub it in your face? And like, if you're around us, we go at each other hard, like we crack jokes. But like the truth is, like, we both admire what each other has done so much, because he knows what I've been through here, of the up and down and figuring it out. And I know for him coming in a 6th round draft pick, he fought his butt off to be a starter and then a captain and be a leader. And all of that came together in 18 when we got to play together. And as excited as we were, like, we were hyped. And in the end of training camp, he played in the 4th preseason game, and all these articles came out like, you know, Jason McCourty probably won't make the team. And you talk about like the excitement and then like a crash ending. We're like, damn, this is about to end before it even got going. And, you know, you fast forward 6 months later and he's on a knee, like as confetti's falling, we win the Super Bowl. To me is like a moment I'll never forget. Because as cool as the Super Bowl was, to me, it was like our story. Like, as much as people wanted to pit us against each other and see that, it was like at the end, the best moment in our whole sports career, fittingly, was together. And for me, it was cool because I had already won 2. So to see him not only playing it, but have like 3 pass breakups, have a huge play in the game, for me, it was like the most gratifying thing in my sports career, because I felt like I was like a fan watching my brother out there, and I'm like, man, like that's my brother, man. So it's been so cool, and even though like we're getting towards the end of our career, to be able to do it at the end of our career, I think made us cherish it even more, because we didn't expect it, and we knew how rare it was to be able to play together, and then to start together, like all of that, like we truly cherish these last 3 years.
Thank you.
No problem.
Twin Nation, great question, Carlita. So I have one last question for you, Dev, before I turn it over to the leadership team. The Black Employees Network is hosting this series for us to share our experiences and support each other as we navigate our careers and personal endeavors. As someone who has been the captain of a team for 10 years, what are your suggestions for us to be successful as a network and team to advance our collective and individual interests?
I would say as individuals to be yourself. I always tell people, they ask me about being a captain, about being a leader, and what I have to do or what I needed to do. And I always say, like, the biggest thing I did was I was just myself. I remember being a captain in college, and, you know, people didn't respect like all our captains the same, because some of the guys were like, man, I got to do whatever the head coach says. And for me, it was like, I can't do that. Like, if I don't agree with something, I don't agree with it. Like, it doesn't mean I'm going to just totally go against it and, you know, do something I'm not supposed to do. I'm always going to be a teammate and do what's best for the team. But as a leader, you know, people vote you and appoint you to be their voice, and they want you to have their back. They want you to do what you think is right. And I would say for you guys as individuals, that's key. And I would say collectively is to remember that you all have the same common goal. And for us, you know, on a team, and I'll just speak for me and my brother, like, you won't get a better, you know, twin brothers, teammates, same goal. And there's times like we go at it. We're arguing about what I think we should do on a play, what he thinks we should do on a play. And then at the end of the day, we always have to reset and remember whichever way we go doesn't matter, because it's all about what's best for everyone. And that's what we'll do. And to me, like, that same teamwork aspect is really in all parts of your life. So for me, that's when I'm on the field with all those guys. That's when I come home and I'm with my wife, is being on the same page and doing all those things. And I've seen that when all of those things align for me, whether it's with organizations and voicing my opinion, but being on the same page, like, everything in my life runs smooth when everything is together. And, you know, like, if one thing is off, if me and my wife are beefing, then football is usually a little bit off. My off the field stuff's a little bit off. And you know, I think for me, like, that's what I've learned. Like, whenever you're a part of a team or something bigger, first you need to make sure you're right individually on what you need to do and being the best you can be for the team. And then ultimately remembering that, you know, we have a team goal and I have to factor in my feelings, and everything that I want to do has to factor in to what's best for the overall group. And I think when you do that and don't have anyone that wants to go rogue or say, you know, forget this is my way or the highway, you always have a chance. I don't care if it's a slip up or an obstacle, you'll overcome it. And I feel like my life is like that. Like, this year has been extremely tough personally, but, you know, I feel like because me and my wife have been strong, it's made everything else strong. It's allowed me to still go play football during a pandemic, to do all those things, has been because at home, I'm still strong. We're strong as a family. And I think that just shows up all throughout your life, no matter what.
Thank you for sharing that, Dev. I just want to, you know, as your moderator tonight, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for always showing up. Thank you for, you know, every time I reach out, I don't think you've ever said no. So thank you for being here. I think at B.E.N and B.E.N Millennials, our goal is to connect people, is to help bring people together, to create and enhance other people's networks, right? Open each other's eyes and just kind of build together. So I want to thank you for being a part of that process. And I want to turn it over to Kyron and Dominique.
So thank you again, Devin. And also, you know, thank your brother as well. I know he was also very willing to come on the speaker series and speak to us as well. I want to thank all of our guests tonight and our audience for being a part of this. And just, not sure if you mentioned it already, Devin, just throw out some ways that we can stay connected with you. If folks want to reach out, are you open to that?
Yeah, we're on like McCourty Twins on all our social media. And then we have our website, McCourtyTwins.com. We got t-shirts on there, how to donate to tackle sickle cell, to Chromebooks for kids. We have all that stuff on McCourtyTwins.com. And then a lot of what we do is just on social media.
Okay, thank you so much. So I encourage everybody to follow all their sites and social media feeds to stay connected and stay engaged in the important work that they're doing in the community and just even beyond that. So without further ado, if you work for the city of Boston, we encourage you to join B.E.N Millennials, and thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys for having me, man. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys.
Thank you,
All you
Devin.
guys that got
Thank
businesses.
you. Thank you,
Someday,
Devin.
young McCourtys will need a job, so remember that McCourty name when my kids need jobs.